In the year 1232, the Mongol armies closed in on the great city of Kaifeng in northern China. And for the first time, they encountered something they had never seen before. From the walls, the defenders of the Jin dynasty unleashed iron spheres packed with gunpowder, what the sources call thunder crash bombs. They exploded with enough force to tear through armor and through bodies. Fire lances spat flame and metal shards into the air. Rockets screamed overhead, trailing fire and smoke like angry spirits. Ask yourself, who is supposed to win this fight? The Jin were drawing on centuries of Chinese experimentation with gunpowder, chemistry, and incendiary weapons. This was not improvisation, this was tradition, science, accumulated knowledge. And the Mongols? Well, they came with bows, composite bows. Yes, wood, horn, sinew, beautifully made, devastating in skilled hands, but still bows. No cannons, no explosives, no fire weapons, no rockets, no thunder, just horses, discipline, and an almost unsettling mobility. So again, one has to ask, how does that end? Kaifeng fell anyway. By 1234, the Jin dynasty was gone, simply erased. The Mongols pushed south, methodically, patiently. And 45 years later, by 1279, Kublai Khan's forces destroyed the last Song Dynasty fleet at the Battle of Yamen. That moment completed the Mongol conquest of China, one of the most technologically advanced civilizations on Earth. Let that sit for a second. The Song had gunpowder weapons, the Mongols didn't. They had massive fortifications, sophisticated siege engines. The Song dynasty, ruling much of China from 960 to 1279, was a technological powerhouse. By the 13th century, its military engineers had developed an entire family of gunpowder weapons. Not prototypes, an arsenal. Take the fire lance, invented around 1150. At first glance, it looks almost quaint, a spear with a tube attached. But that tube, made of bamboo or metal, was packed with gunpowder. When ignited, whoosh, a jet of flame, sparks, and debris burst outward. Iron pellets, shards of porcelain. Not a gun, more like a one-shot nightmare. In close quarters, on city walls, at gates or ladders, it was devastating. Loud, blinding, terrifying. And terror, as any veteran will tell you, is a weapon all its own. Then there were the thunder crash bombs, pili, the sources call them. Iron shells filled with gunpowder, too heavy to throw by hand. But trebuchets could launch them over fortress walls, where they detonated on impact, spraying shrapnel in all directions. And rockets, yes, rockets. Fire arrows, fitted with gunpowder propellant tubes, flying hundreds of yards. Some carried incendiaries. Others existed purely for effect, to scream through the air and remind the attacker that something unnatural was coming toward them very fast. Now ask yourself, what kind of army walks calmly into that? The defenses were no less impressive. Cities like Shenyang and Fancheng rose behind massive walls 30 feet high, reinforced with packed earth and brick, surrounded by moats. These were the product of centuries of siege warfare. The Song knew how to defend cities. They had done it for generations against the Khitan Liao, against the Jurchen Jin. By the time the Mongols arrived in the 1230 seconds, urban warfare was almost an art form. On paper, they had everything. Everything. That is, except an answer to Mongol strategy. The Mongols, who began invading China under Genghis Khan in 1211, did not come from cities. They came from the steppe, from the Mongolian plateau, nomads, pastoralists, people who lived in felt tents and moved constantly with their herds. And their primary weapon was the bow. Not just any bow, the composite recurve bow. Layers of wood, horn and sinew glued and bound together with remarkable care. Compact, powerful, precise. An experienced Mongol archer could shoot effectively at 200 yards. At full draw, the arrow could fly well, over 300, farther than the English longbow, incidentally. But range alone is not the point. The point is that Mongol warriors could do this from horseback at full gallop. Each rider carried 2 or 3 bows, multiple quivers of arrows, spare strings. If one bow failed, another was already in hand. Now, notice what they did not have. No gunpowder, no fortified cities, no walls, no towers, just speed. A Mongol army could travel 50 miles a day, sometimes more, faster than any sedentary army could even imagine. They could concentrate forces, strike, and vanish before defenders fully understood what was happening. Their doctrine was built around mobility, deception, and overwhelming local superiority. Feigned retreats lured enemies out of defensive positions. Then the trap closed. Encirclement, annihilation, and they scouted relentlessly. Terrain, enemy habits, nothing was left to chance. Still, they were not perfect. When the Mongols first encountered Chinese fortifications, they struggled. Early campaigns stalled against walled cities. Nomads from the steppe had no tradition of siege warfare. But here is the crucial point. They learned. After conquering the Jin dynasty in 1234, they recruited Chinese engineers experts in siegecraft and gunpowder. The Mongols did not invent siege technology. They absorbed it patiently. So the question comes, when speed learns patience, what is left to stop it? The siege of Xiangyang, lasting from 1268 to 1273, was the turning point. Xiangyang and its twin city, Fancheng, controlled the Han River, the gateway to the Song heartland in southern China. Massive walls, tens of thousands of defenders, constant resupply by river. These were not cities meant to fall, and for years they didn't. For 5 long years, Mongol forces pressed the siege. The Song defenders used everything they had. Fire lances flared from the walls to repel assaults. Rockets harassed Mongol camps at night. Thunder crash bombs were hurled downward, bursting into fire and iron. They held. So, pause here and ask the obvious question. What finally changed? In 1272, 2 men arrived in Kublai Khan's camp. Persian engineers Ismail and al-ad-Din. They brought with them a weapon the Chinese had never faced, the counterweight trebuchet. Chinese siege engines were traction trebuchets, powered by teams of men pulling ropes. Effective, yes, but limited. The counterweight trebuchet was something else entirely. Massive stone or metal weights drove the arm. No exhaustion, no loss of power, shot after shot, with terrible consistency. Under Persian supervision, the Mongols built these machines and positioned them at Xiangyang's weakest points. Then, the bombardment began. The defenders watched stone projectiles, some weighing over 100 pounds, rise into the sky and crash down upon their walls. Towers collapsed, walls cracked, and with them, morale. On March 14, 1273, Xiangyang surrendered. Fancheng followed soon after. The gateway to the Song heartland stood open. And here is the irony one worth lingering on. The Song had gunpowder, but the Mongols won with Persian-designed trebuchets, operated by Chinese engineers. The Song had centuries of technological development. The Mongols won by borrowing everyone else's and integrating it faster. And in war, speed of adaptation often matters more than invention itself. By 1279, the Song Dynasty had been reduced to a shadow of itself. What remained was a fleet over 1,000 ships, carrying a child emperor, Zhao Bing, barely 8 years old, and a few thousand loyalists, clinging to the hope that survival at sea might buy them time. It did not. On March 19, 1279, near Yamen in southern China, they encountered the Mongol fleet, by then a Chinese-Mongol hybrid force, commanded by Zhang Hongfan, a former Song general who had changed sides. On paper, the Song should have won. They outnumbered the Mongol ships nearly 10 to 1. But paper, as history reminds us, is a fragile thing. The Yuan forces used fire ships' vessels packed with incendiaries and sent drifting into the Song formation. They maneuvered carefully, blocking escape routes, isolating targets, destroying them methodically. The Song, fearing disorder, had chained their ships together for cohesion. That decision sealed their fate. When fire spread, it spread everywhere. As defeat became undeniable, something remarkable and tragic occurred. The Song Prime Minister, Lu Shifu, took the young emperor in his arms and leapt into the sea. Thousands followed. Capture was unthinkable. Survival, irrelevant. By the end of the day, most of the Song fleet was destroyed or taken. A dynasty that had endured for more than 3 centuries was gone. Soon after, Kublai Khan declared the Yuan dynasty, ruling all of China. And so the Song did not fall with a final invention, or a last technological miracle, but with a quiet, devastating truth. War is not won by what you possess, but by how you adapt, and how quickly. So what, in the end, was the lesson of the Song dynasty? It was not a lack of technology. Quite the opposite. The Song were among the most technologically advanced societies on Earth. Gunpowder, engineers, fortifications. Centuries of accumulated knowledge. But technological superiority, on its own, is a fragile thing, because it does not matter what you invent if your enemy learns faster than you can exploit it. The Mongols conquered China with wood bows, not because they rejected technology, but because they refused to be limited by it. They recruited siege engineers. They adopted gunpowder weapons. They built fleets. When naval power became necessary, they were ruthlessly, almost coldly pragmatic. In 1232, Mongol warriors stood outside Chinese cities, watching flames erupt from bamboo tubes and iron bombs explode against their ranks. By 1279, Mongol-led armies were using those same weapons against the last Song holdouts. That is the real story. Not that the Mongols won with primitive tools, but that they refused to stay primitive. They took what worked, they discarded what did not, and they kept moving forward. The Song had centuries of innovation. The Mongols had 45 years of relentless adaptation, and in 1279, on a blood-soaked bay in southern China, adaptation won. Now, if you've stayed with me this far, thank you, truly. If you enjoyed this story, consider liking the video and perhaps subscribing. It helps these old lectures find new listeners. History, after all, only lives as long as we continue to tell it. Thank you for watching.